Chapter 6. The next morning, Devon got up and left to go to work, as usual. I was still lying in bed, fighting the nausea that was quickly becoming familiar, when my PCD rang. I rolled until I could reach the nightstand where Devon had put it before he'd left, and picked up the call. Hello. I didn't bother to check the screen to see who was calling. Nicki, asked Bill's voice. I hope I didn't wake you. No, I was awake. I didn't tell him I was lying in bed or why I was still there. Oh, good. He sounded relieved. I need to see you. Now? I glanced at the clock beside the bed. I didn't know if I could get up without being sick, but I knew if I waited until the nausea passed and saw him this morning, I'd be late for work. No. It's not urgent, but if you can stop by after work tonight, it would be great. I was relieved. After work, I shouldn't be sick to my stomach, at least if things continued the way they had been. Sure, I can do that. Do I need to bring Dev too? No. I don't mind if he comes along, but I don't need to see him, just you. He seemed kind of distracted, but I didn't think it was my place to ask what was up. I told him I'd be there after work, and we rang off. I continued to lie in bed until the worst of the nausea passed, then I got up and dressed. It wasn't until I was halfway to the office that I realized that the nausea hadn't lasted as long this morning as it had for the last week. I spent the day getting some of my work finished, in between a still alarming number of calls from the press about Annie's death. My mind kept drifting back to why Bill might need to see me. The one advantage to being busy is that time passes quickly, and soon the workday was over. I sent Devon a message letting him know I'd be late, and headed to see Bill. As I approached, Bill answered the door himself, making it obvious that he'd been waiting for me. Looking around, I didn't see Terry or Karen, and I wondered if we were the only ones here. Bill led me into his office, and we sat in the black leather furniture that made up the seating area on one end of the long, narrow room. I resisted the urge to curl up in the overstuffed chair as I'd been doing for years. Somehow it didn't seem appropriate now. How are you doing? Are you feeling all right? I have some nausea early in the mornings, but otherwise I'm good. Good. He looked away for a moment, then met my eyes again. I have another non-shifter for you to meet. It means another trip. He seemed reluctant for some reason. I'm going to need a couple of weeks until I can get time off. That's fine. Where are we going this time? A small town in central Texas. He took a deep breath. The non-shifter is a genealogist. Your dad's family came from the area, and I thought it would make a good cover for you to go meet her. Hire her to do your parents' family history. Tell her it's for a Christmas present. He held up one hand, stopping me from speaking. No, I haven't found out anything new about your birth parents. At this point, because of the circumstances of your surrender and adoption, I don't expect to. It didn't matter that they weren't my birth parents, they were my parents. After having 2 children of their own, they had adopted 4 more, including me. I didn't think about them not being my birth parents, they were the only parents I knew. They'd love it, but I'm not sure I can afford a present like that. I was reluctant to admit how tight my finances were, but if Devon and I were going to find a house, we would have to come up with deposits. I didn't have that kind of money set aside. Don't worry about that. Just like the last trip, the pack will cover all your expenses, including her fees. I can't let you do that. You can. Consider it part of your payment for doing this for us. Okay. In fact, that's another thing. We need to consider some kind of salary for the traveling you do for the pack. I've had a few groups approach me, not just wolves either. They're interested in having you meet some of their people. If you end up doing much more for us, you may have a hard time keeping a steady job for anyone outside the pack. I can't do that. I'll earn my own way. What part of doing this for the pack isn't earning your own way? It's not a publicly acknowledgeable job, but it is a job nonetheless. We can come up with an official position that you can tell people about. I have several businesses. I'm sure we can find a job for you that would easily explain your traveling and your salary. I saw an opportunity here. What kind of salary? He smiled. One well worth your while. Do you have something in mind? Not really, but Devon and I are looking for a house, and rent's going to be more than I'm paying now. Maybe not as much as we're paying for 2 apartments, but definitely more than one, and honestly, Dad can't afford to pay Dev nearly as much as he'd like to. I can see where you're coming from. I may even be able to help with the house. The pack owns several. I knew I should tell him that Devon and I had sealed our mating, but somehow it felt like advertising our sex lives. Intellectually, I knew that he knew we were having sex. I mean, really, he already knew I was pregnant. However, it still made me uncomfortable. It's going to need to be at least a 2-bedroom. I let him know what we would need in the way of a house. We don't want to have to move again in a few months. Bill nodded, but he seemed to be thinking about something else. Any idea how long until you can get the time off? I still have quite a bit of time coming. I can probably tell Mr. Willoughby about my pregnancy and morning sickness and get some time off soon if I need to. Not too quick. I still need time to find a female enforcer to send with you. Actually, sir, I felt my face heat and knew I was blushing. That won't be necessary. You can send men with me now, though I'm not sure how Devon might react to Gabriel even now. Gabriel was one of Bill's personal security team, and although I didn't expect Bill to send with me, I wanted to be clear. Before we realized that Devon and I were potential mates, he had been under the impression that Gabriel and I had dated. We hadn't, but we had gone out as friends several times, and Devon had seen us together. It had led to a confrontation between the two of them when Devon's kitsune instincts got the better of him. Bill looked thoughtful a moment. Well, that will definitely make it easier. I'm glad you've sealed your mating. Devon's a good man and he comes from a good family. He'll take good care of you. I opened my mouth to make a smart remark, but he raised one hand in front of him stopped me. I know, you don't need anyone to take care of you, you can take care of yourself. You're about to find out that in a lot of ways, a mated pair are 2 halves of a whole. He stopped there, as if deciding not to continue. Let me know when you can get the time off, and I'll have Ethan figure out who to send with you. We spent a few more minutes discussing the non-shifter and the trip, and I asked him not to say anything about my pregnancy for now, that we were keeping it quiet. On the drive home, I considered how asking for more time off might go over with Mr. Willoughby. I'd barely been back a week, and part of that I'd called in sick, and already I was going to ask to be out again. I'd told Bill it wouldn't be a problem, but honestly, I wasn't sure. I had time coming, but you can never tell if they're going to let you take it. Then there was Devon taking time off again, leaving Dad without help. As Devon crossed my mind, I suddenly knew he was home, cooking, waiting to find out what Bill had wanted. Shaken, I focused on the road and making it home safely. For a second, when I'd connected with Devon, I'd been unaware of what I was doing and where I was going. The idea that I could have hurt someone bothered me, and I tried to concentrate on not letting it happen again.